Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted we're having our next edition of the Bonner Institute webinar series. It's a very exciting webinar today because the CEO and founder of the Bonner Institute for Purposeful Leadership is giving a webinar today on why does a company exist and how that ties into the themes of purposeful leadership and even generative artificial intelligence. I've known James de Gaspé Bonnar for several years. I've worked for James for many years as well. And I have been so excited about this webinar. I encouraged James to give this webinar because the topic is so timely. James, over to you.
Thank you, John. It's my great pleasure to speak to you today on why a company, or why does a company exist, purposeful leadership and the principles of ESG. So as you'll see, my presentation reflects the Bonner Institute's North American roots. However, I must add that purposeful leadership and ESG have no borders. Before I begin, I'd like to share with you a short story. A couple of days ago, I gave a dry run in front of some friends, and I shared with them a quote from a 17th century French philosopher called Blaise Pascal. And Blaise Pascal started his speech in front of an audience of several hundred by apologizing. He said, "Please forgive me, but I didn't have time to be brief." There was silence on the part of the people who were listening. And then somebody said very matter-of-factly, "Well, James, you do know that Churchill says that concision is vital for success." I trust you will see that I have endeavored to take Churchill's words to heart. The unprecedented nature and scope of exponential change is unparalleled in human history. Among the causes identified on this slide, generative AI is most prominent in changing the nature of business. Sean Barker, our host today, and a senior vice president of AI at the Institute, gave 2 master classes on AI and corporate governance last year. John created a fictitious high-growth company example that was expanding globally. He asked the audience to identify potential governance risks associated with AI in the story. Out of some 80 attendees, 6 risks were identified. At the end of John's story, he said that he had embedded 50 significant risks in the story. That means that out of an audience of current, past, and future board members, 44 out of 50, or 88% of the risk potential had not been identified. And that included the loss of IP, of intellectual property, and ultimately what would be the demise of the company. In a recent board member survey, AI was mentioned as being very important, but it was not top of mind. Boards need to do a much better job in fostering awareness for AI among its members and in the C-suite. According to the US-based National Association of Corporate Directors, the NACD, and the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC, these leaders' North Star will be purposeful and ethical leadership. As you will see on this slide and the next one, companies have been transitioning over the past 20 plus years from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. Today, the most successful enterprises deliver both sustainable profits and meaningful social value. Let's read together the quote from Klaus Schwab. Companies seek long-term value creation by taking into account the needs of all their stakeholders and society at large. However, and this is a significant however, we have to ask, why does the economic system that made America, indeed the West, strong, appear to many to be failing today? We will explore together how this can be fixed. To thrive in a volatile, uncertain, changing, and ambiguous world known by its acronym of VUCA, corporate leaders need to develop a purposeful and ethical leadership mindset. They also require corresponding technical and people skills to manage risks and grow the business. These leaders are guided by strong core values and a strong sense of purpose. So, what is purposeful leadership? We define purposeful leadership as an ethical choice that principal leaders make to achieve something greater than themselves and the companies they lead in a volatile, uncertain, changing, and ambiguous world. Our focus at the Bonner Institute is on optimizing board and management talent through purpose, ethics, and mindset change, which share many traits with ESG. Indeed, as we will discuss later, we see ESG as being closely related to purposeful leadership. So, why does a company exist as a corporate entity? And why and what, more precisely, is its purpose? Companies and their boards are rightly focused on the pressures that affect the bottom line, supply chain issues, geopolitical unrest, and the ecological and economic costs of climate change, the impact of ESG, forceful stakeholder activism, and unbridled technological development are but a few examples of the myriad of external issues facing leaders today. And then there are the internal ones, such as lack of strategic direction and role clarity, poor quality decisions, low engagement and low commitment, low trust and lack of diversity of thought, approaches, and ideas. If unprepared, companies scramble to survive, and often they don't. The most successful principally led companies thrive. Their boards and management are in alignment and have purpose. They have in place effective processes to manage externally and internally generated corporate risk. They exploit opportunities that others don't see. These companies are high performing. What are the top impressions customers have about brands? 28% of customers identify how the company treats its own employees and people in general is key to how they perceive the brand. 20% see or have identified how the company treats the environment as again being central to their perception of brand. And 19% of the customers support the community in which it operates. That again, they correlate to brand. Note, however, that there is a variety of views about decision-making influences in each generation, and clearly there are different perspectives within each generation. So Chief Experience Officers' initiatives are driven by business growth, as well as by a desire for positive social impact outcomes. In their view, we asked what motivates your organization to undertake initiative it hopes will have a positive impact. 18% responded well, shareholders' expectations. 33 responded employee expectations. 35 public opinion, scrutiny, brand protection. 40 keeping up with with competitors. 40 again, customer expectations. 43, my organization's culture and policies. And at 46, the opportunity to generate new revenue streams. Leaders seem to believe that doing good is good for business. Leaders are starting to embrace purpose now more than ever, and they're bringing it into their day to day. In 2029, when the statement purpose of a corporation is to promote an economy that serves all stakeholders, when that was written, it may have been more aspirational than real. Today, however, purposeful leadership has entered into the corporate DNA of many companies, large and small. Jacques Charest, past president of the Union Wallonne des Entreprises in Belgium, proclaimed, and I quote, Notre modèle économique est dans l'impasse. Il faut le changer. Our economic model is at an impasse. It must be changed. Best intentions, though, are not enough. Deliberate intent and effective delivery are essential. In addition to Jamie Dimon and Tricia Griffith, Dr. Jaff Winter of the University of Amsterdam highlights to properly address the crisis of the modern corporation, boards need to embrace the duty of social responsibility. And Professor Alex Edmonds of the London Business School, he says that great companies deliver both purpose and profit. The most successful companies thrive. They are high performing and they embrace the primacy of all stakeholders. To thrive in a VUCA world, corporate leaders need to break out of a defensive mindset and to meet the human needs of their stakeholders. They develop a purposeful, agile, and ethical leadership mindset based on trust. This enables them to manage and to seize new opportunities. What makes you change corporate decisions? It starts with customers and then rapidly expands to all stakeholders. I would argue that a responsible company building ESG into its decision-making process may choose to make a decision that doesn't initially drive profits, but removes an environmental risk, capitalizes on creating social value, or solving a societal problem. And the way they make this decision will show good governance. What differentiates the Bonner Institute from other consultancies is that we empower high-performing companies to promote socially responsible corporate values and to generate profitable and sustainable revenues. We believe, however, that how money is made is important. The cornerstone of our programs is the realization that well-run, socially responsible companies outperform over time companies that are not, and by a wide margin. It is a win-win situation for all stakeholders. The most successful companies are led by purposeful and ethical leaders. Or phrased differently, successful leaders are purposeful leaders. Our experience shows that the greatest risk facing organizations is the dearth of purposeful and ethical leadership at the very top. Leaders require character traits, skills, behaviors, and values that enable them to excel in navigating disruptive change. If not, the company will ultimately fail. Let's read together the 6 key traits of a purposeful leadership. So, purposeful leadership is characterized by an ethical choice that principal leaders make to achieve something greater than themselves and the companies they lead. Most successful companies understand that purpose is key for prosperity over the long term for all their stakeholders. Leaders align their personal, professional, and organizational value and mission with the organization's purpose and stakeholders' expectations. Leaders believe that their vision of the future is worthwhile and achievable. It inspires others to reach for their dreams. Leaders move away from shareholder primacy and family and tribal mentality. From our perspective, purposeful leadership is the business equivalent of the medical profession's Hippocratic Oath. Successful companies thrive. The boards and management have purpose and alignment. They have in place effective processes to anticipate and manage corporate risk. They identify opportunities that others don't see. The most successful companies grasp that stakeholders' values must be in alignment with their organization's corporate values. Stakeholders want to see their values reflected in the organization's values. This is why purposeful leadership is important. Corporate leaders must create and sustain the company's purpose and the strategic vision that drives company value. There is an economic imperative here. Leaders must maximize the long-term value of the company. However, as we stated earlier, how we make money is important. John Cotter and James Haskett identified that the net income of corporations that embrace a high-performing corporate culture outperform those that do not by a factor of 756 to 1. Take note, and this is over a span of 11 years. An example of a company with a strong corporate culture is Google. Many years ago, well, I'm exaggerating when I say many years ago, a few years ago, Google commissioned a study called Project Aristotle, and the purpose of the study was to identify the drivers for a high-performing organization. And what they found surprised them and perhaps us. The pillars of a high-performance corporate culture, according to Project Aristotle, include psychological safety and trust. Other well-known companies with high-performance purposes are HubSpot and Pretoria. Indeed, it's worth noting that 90% of a company's market value is based on intangible assets, such as brand and corporate reputation. I'll repeat that. 90% of their value is derived from these considerations. Let's consider shareholder value maximization versus customer, stakeholder value maximization. Please take a few moments to read this slide. Purposeful and ethical leadership is value-based. It underpins a performance-enhancing corporate culture. Profits are undeniably vital for a company. However, as we mentioned earlier, stakeholders embrace the importance of how money is made, increasingly so. Leading companies believe that shareholders are best served when their stakeholders' trust has been well served. Value maximization is a fence that corporations need to mend constantly. Concerns among customers and investors escalate and will affect enterprise value. Some of these concerns include technological advances, for example, generative AI, community-centric innovations, societal geopolitical changes, access, price, outcomes. If companies address these concerns, their customers will love their companies, and investors will then want to invest at a premium price for a part of these companies. However, if companies do not address these concerns, and there are many, companies then become disliked, shunned by customers, and investors will respond accordingly. ESG is an acronym that stands for environmental, social, and governance, each with its own set of principles. Environmental principles cover a company's impact on the earth, including energy use, waste management, and resource use. Social principles consider all the stakeholders a company may have. Governance principles focus on the internal operations of the company, including leadership, risk management, corporate culture, only to name a few. With its global reach, ESG's responsible business practices cover several aspects of how an organization runs and what it values. The transition from shareholder to stakeholder capitalism is proving difficult for many companies. Boards of directors are struggling with how to respond effectively to increasing levels of stakeholder activism. Think, for example, of customer boycotts of companies organized by stakeholders who disagree with the company's investment decisions or their stance on social responsibility or politics. Demographic shifts and other changes in the workforce are having impacts on our immigration and labor policies. And then there are the huge challenges posed by AI, which we will address further in a moment. Purposeful leadership is a mindset, a tool, a set of practices that empowers enterprises to successfully navigate disruptive change. It shares many traits with ESG. ESG is increasingly playing an important role in corporate governance. It strengthens board and management decision-making through purposeful leadership. Leaders become more resolute and principled. This shift empowers a high-performing corporate culture that benefits all stakeholders. Embracing ESG principles leads to sustainable growth, improved risk management, an enhanced reputation, and ultimately long-term profitability and success. Many leaders are scrambling to survive. They need an ethical, purposeful mindset that will empower them to thrive. We can help. AI is mutating rapidly. It is a technology that is affecting the whole economy. It is wreaking havoc on global power systems. The almost overnight surge in electricity demands from data centers is now outstripping the available power supply in many parts of the world. In the UK, for example, AI is expected to suck up 500% more energy over the next decade. I'll repeat, 500% more energy. The increased demand for electricity for renewable energy is stark. It will require new energy sources, including nuclear, which has its own set of challenges. Yet today, many boards and management teams see AI essentially as a productivity tool. Increasingly, we hear of AI replacing jobs. The 2023 McKinsey report says that generative AI would automate between 60 and 70% of employees' workloads. The World Economic Forum summarized the situation by saying that by 2027, the potential for cost savings and efficiency gains produced by generative AI will be overwhelming. Indeed, AI excites CFOs because of those productivity gains. But boards and the C-suite must also gauge the associated perils. OpenAI's latest AI model, ChatGPT-01, has raised significant concerns about its ability to deceive researchers and attempt to bypass shutdown commands. It frequently lied to cover its tracks when questioned about that. Take a moment, please, to consider the ramifications of what I just shared with you. The nature of work and indeed of business is changing radically, and boards need to be and have much more awareness of AI on companies' governance. This isn't only a nice to have, it is an imperative. For those companies in need of assistance on how to proceed, the Bonner Institute has the experience and expertise you require. It is worth repeating that our experience shows that the greatest risk facing not governments, but facing companies, organizations really as a whole, is the dearth of impactful, purposeful, and ethical leadership at the very top. Leaders require character traits, skills, behaviors, values that enable them to excel in navigating disruptive change. Let's review together a list of some of the enablers of success creation. Having one or being able to attract diverse talent, to build trust within the organization. Project Aristotle of Google showed the importance why. Having a purposeful governance model, encouraging a learning culture, paying good wages and benefits to attract and keep key staff. Rally the workforce among a common goal. Be an exemplar. Having empathy. Be nurturing, caring, giving. And if you are, this leads to low turnover and high productivity, which in turn leads to low operating costs. Connect purpose and what customers value. All of this taken together contributes to superior performance and impact, including financial performance. According to the NACD, the National Association of Corporate Directors, there lies in the radically changing nature of business great challenges, but there also lies immense opportunities for those companies that dare to look for them. It is of the utmost importance to take a moment to ask yourself the right questions and gain insights. Among them, what are your vision and priorities for the organization and for yourself? How do you manage your time? We know that time is the most precious commodity a leader has. Feedback. How do you give and receive feedback? Succession planning. It is never, never too early to start thinking about succession planning. Evaluation and alignment, leading under pressure, and staying true to yourself. The words of Aristotle are apt here. Where the needs of the world and your talents cross, there lies the vocation of a purposeful leader in the time of a VUCA world. I'd like to share with you a few words about the Bonner Institute. We are an advisory firm established in Ottawa, Canada, that partners with high growth companies to optimize their board and management talent through purpose and ethics. We offer our clients advisements, courses, and curriculum based training with flexible engagement models. Our core commitment, the higher good of all our stakeholders and shareholders, clients, team members, vendors, community, and the environment are its component parts. Our core values, client-focused professionalism, confidentiality, responsiveness, authenticity, respectfulness, and social responsibility. Our passion to empower our clients to thrive, not just survive, to develop confident and flexible, purposeful board members and management to excel in a VUCA world. Please don't hesitate to contact our experts for a free consultation on many of the issues raised during this presentation. I would like to thank you very much for your attentiveness and your participation. John, back to you.
James, an insightful, excellent presentation. And the questions that always arise for me in the context of AI, um, a CFO is going to say, well, my competitor is able to automate the majority of its work using AI. If I don't do the same automation, how will I survive? How does purposeful leadership play into that analysis?
So, what purposeful leadership would play in that analysis is that it would ensure that at the board level and at the management level, one, they have an understanding of how AI is effectively being used in the company. Two, what the oversight capabilities are to ensure that in the case of ChatGPT 01, the when a computer lies to its overmasters, it's detected properly on time and effectively. So basically, what they will ensure is the role of humans to oversee the AI. And they will also ensure that the humans have the appropriate values to ensure that it's working for the values of all their stakeholders in every element of their endeavors.
I think the energy costs that you raised with AI could cause a CFO to hesitate. becoming dependent on AI. If you automate through AI, and then for whatever reason, energy costs increase significantly, such that being dependent on AI is no longer economically feasible. I think that is also a risk that CFOs, CEOs, and boards need to take account of as well.
And also the cost of alternate forms,
Mm, mhm.
because now we're hearing of companies, big companies, that are in the process of buying their own small nuclear capabilities
Yes.
to be able to generate more cost-effective
Mhm.
electricity, energy to fuel their AI
Mhm.
initiatives. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
AI, in many ways, and perhaps the analogy is a bit pedestrian, but it's the one that comes to mind. It's a bit the far west. You know,
Mhm.
we're there. We're going out in different directions. If you don't mind, if I mix my metaphors, we're throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks and what doesn't
Mm.
stick. And what is required? I mean, this is, I would think, somewhat inevitable when there's new technology, new or a new paradigm that's really coming into it. But we have to look purposefully at what we're doing. We have to be measured. We have to have awareness. We have to have, and this is where the boards have to play their role in a way they haven't for so very long. They
Mhm.
really have to assert their authority to ensure that the company and they are aware of the risks and opportunities. In a word, they really have to ensure that their governance is exemplary.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I would venture to say that for many, there's a ways to go.
Yes, I would think so as well. That's certainly my impression. That boards are going to have to step up. I believe that the issue of climate change is going to be huge, energy consumption. And then, of course, quite frankly, the issue of the human cost of AI, the loss of jobs. How will that be addressed in the society? So, a lot of issues that go to the core purpose of a company. James, any other thoughts that come to mind?
You know, um, what does come to mind is the importance of business leaders really to step up.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was saying in my talk that there's a dearth of leadership at the level, at the top level of
Hmm.
business. But there's a dearth of leadership, period, in the world
Hmm.
today. And I see through various manifestations and the anger and the rage that we're seeing pretty well everywhere in the world, um, that people are crying out for some form of direction, for some sort of something that
Hmm.
makes sense to help them as they move forward. And they're not seeing it, and they're
Hmm.
lashing out. And that is so very dangerous because at that point, that's, as we've seen in the last century, that can lead to demagogues and worse.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so the business class, I think, is uniquely positioned because they have the means, in terms of the financial means, much more so than many, many, many countries. They have, and well, let me rephrase it. There's a significant portion of the business class that has the disposition and the commitment to work for the higher good of not only their companies, but of people, of society, of their stakeholders in general. And I, there are, I believe the business class is our best chance to manage what we're facing now. And it is hard. I spoke about how difficult it is for companies to transition from shareholder to stakeholder capitalism.
Hmm.
It is very, very hard for any one person, any one company, or any one group to do so. And that's where I truly believe, and this isn't self serving, that companies such as ours have a role to play to help support them in this.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That's my conviction.
Yes. Well, James, I want to thank you for a very insightful webinar. This is one of the most important webinars I believe the Institute has given. And I would just like to note for the audience that views this in a recording, we have purposeful leadership programs that can be customized for boards and their particular circumstances, as well as for the corporate officers, also known as the C suite. And we can explore AI and in the context of purposeful leadership in a particular industry segment, a particular business problem. So I want to thank everyone who will be viewing this webinar in the future. And James, I want to thank you for giving this webinar.
Thank you, John.